this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee to order. Council members, if you are on the Budget and Finance Committee, please put up your yellow committee member tag so that you could be easily identified. We do have one person up for public comment. We have Mr. Steve Ryder, who will be speaking on BL 2025-811. Mr. Ryder, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. On this particular bill, I'm asking for deferral. The reason why is I don't know if this has been properly referred to the different boards and commissions. There should be a resolution by them or some sort of letters of support. I don't know if they're there or not. I just think we need to have a little more discussion on that. As long as we're on boards and commissions, I want to take this opportunity to bring up on the continuum of care of the Homeless Planning Council. It's my understanding Metro Legal has taken the position that the Homeless Planning Council is a board and commission of Metro government. I kind of tend to disagree with that opinion. The reason why is very simple. Most boards and commissions, the membership goes before the Rules and Confirmation Committee. That's not true of the Homeless Planning Council. Also on boards and commissions, they generally have the right to hire and fire and do the performance evaluation of the executive director. That does not take place here at all. Also, before most meetings of boards and commissions, there's an opportunity. You are told that if you want to go out and disagree with a decision that the board or commission makes, that you have the right under a writ of cert to go before a chancery court and appeal that. The Homeless Planning Commission doesn't do that either. So I think it's a real problem. Also, Metro Legal really has a conflict of interest. Metro Legal goes out there and represents the Office of Homeless Services. At the same time, they're out there giving legal advice to the Homeless Planning Council. Their interests are not aligned. You simply cannot go out there and provide legal advice to two different entities without disclosing who your client is. Metro Legal has never done that. And I've been very patient on this issue, but I think it's time that Metro Legal goes out there and identifies that their client is the Office of Homeless Services, not the Continuum of Care or the Homeless Planning Council. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And now we have a brief announcement to outline some information about what's coming up with our the budget process, and then we will have a presentation from finance. So colleagues, in the coming weeks, the Budget and Finance Committee will be holding a series of meetings to assist the council with the consideration and adoption of a fiscal year 26 operating budget of the Metropolitan government. As you all know, the Metro Charter requires us to adopt an operating budget prior to June 30th, the last day of the fiscal year. So beginning next Monday, May 12th, we will hold a series of 18 departmental budget hearings over the course of 6 days in this chamber. Each day, the hearings will begin at 4 p.m. and can be viewed live on Metro's YouTube channel. Once the departmental hearings conclude, the committee will hold a series of 5 work sessions beginning on Tuesday, May 27th. The first work session will be held in this chamber, where we will hear from Finance's Office of Management and Budget, as well as Director Hall regarding the fiscal year 26 pay plan. The remaining work sessions will be held in the jury assembly room on the ground floor of this building, the historic courthouse and City Hall. All these meetings will begin at 4 p.m. and can also be viewed live on Metro's YouTube channel. For the viewing public, the details of these meetings can be found on Metro's calendar of events on nashville.gov. For additional convenience, the Metro Council office will be posting the committee meeting information to its social media accounts, including links to the live streams. So colleagues, please feel free to share those at your convenience. Other major dates for budget legislation consideration you will need to have on your calendars are May 15th, the mayor will file the capital improvements budget or the CIB ordinance. May 20th will be the first reading of the operation budget, tax levy, and CIB. The certified tax rate resolution will also be up for consideration, but should be deferred to track with the budget. May 22nd, wish list submissions deadline. This year, we will be utilizing a digital wish list form that you will receive via email from the council office after the budget book is delivered. If you need any assistance with the online wish list form, Maria Calder and Melanie Cruz will be able to help you. If you would like to have a hard copy of the budget book, please let the council office know by emailing coadmin@nashville.gov as soon as possible. That request is for council members, if a council member would like a hard copy of the budget book. On June 30th, the second reading of the operating budget, tax levy, and CIB, again, that's on June 3rd. This includes a public hearing related to each of these ordinances. June 10th will be a special call meeting for the third reading of the CIB, and June 17th will be the third and final reading of the operating budget and tax levy. All of the above scheduling information was previously provided to you via email and can also be found on the legislative calendar. So with that, we are going to go into our presentation. We have a financial update and fiscal year 2026 recommended budget. I am going to turn it over to finance. If you all could introduce yourselves and welcome. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you taking your time out and coming to talk to us today.
Thank you so much for having us. My name's Janine Reed. I'm Director of Finance, and with me today is Aaron Pratt, our Budget Officer. Before we get started, I really want to extend a thank you to the entire OMB team. A lot of them are in the back, and they have worked tirelessly over the last several months preparing this budget and really working with departments as well. And so a huge shout out and thank you to all of you for all of your hard work. And of course to Aaron. So we'll get started. All right, so today we're going to talk through key financial considerations. We're going to briefly touch on the FY25 budget and do a quick recap on what's happening to date. We're going to talk through the FY26 recommended budget, and then we'll briefly touch on the calendar and budget legislation that's coming down the pike. All right, so 5 key pillars to financial condition assessment for Metro. These are really important. And why do these matter? They matter because they drive our ability to provide services and fund projects. We're going to walk through each one of these quickly. Clean audit. So I'm proud to say that in FY 2024, our annual comprehensive financial report did receive a clean audit. The government and enterprise net position both increased in FY 24. What is a clean audit? A clean audit means that we received an unmodified opinion from our external auditors. In addition to that, this year, we are really happy to say that we did not have any material weaknesses either. The second pillar is the fund balance policy, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we did have an in-depth presentation from Davenport just in April. But a key few highlights from the fund balance policy that Council recently passed. This is best practice. It aligns with our credit ratings. We actually had several credit rating agency calls today, and they actually asked about the fund balance policy. So I do want to remind you, this is top of mind for them. It is GFOA recommended. And then 2 other really key points is that it does reduce our borrowing costs, which means it saves Metro money. And it at the same time earns revenue through interest that is earned on those reserves. Some key points about the fund balance policy is our operating reserve, which is the GSD fund, USD fund, and schools fund. Those targets are all at 17%. For the debt service funds, those funds targets are at 50%, and those targets are all based off of expenditures for the next budget cycle. The new thing that was included in the April resolution was the establishment of the Budget Sustainability Reserve. That is a target of 1 to 6%. It is established by the finance director and is included with the budget ordinance. So in your FY26 recommended budget, this is the first time you will actually see the Budget Sustainability Fund. All right, our next pillar is the ratings. And I briefly mentioned this, But our ratings did increase in 2023, primarily as a result of our fund balance. We moved to a AA+ rating. And some key things that our rating agencies noted were that we had a growing, diverse economy, we had proactive management, and a strong financial position with our reserves. The next thing is a structurally balanced budget. So what does that mean? It means that our recurring revenues are sufficient for our recurring expenditures. We have reliable recurring revenues and that we are in compliance with applicable laws and procedures. And the last pillar I'll talk about is our economy. So Nashville continues to be one of the fastest growing metropolitan statistical areas in the nation. We have extremely low unemployment rates compared to Tennessee as a whole, but also compared to the U.S. Our per household personal income, as reported in the 2024 ACFR for 23, was a little more than $92,000 per household. And we also have a great balance and diverse economy with a wide range of businesses here in Nashville. Although these are really key factors, things are a little bit uncertain as we move into FY26. So Nashville really experienced extraordinary growth in the past several years post-pandemic. And we have a chart that you will actually get to see that visually, what that looks like in the slide deck. However, we are now seeing post-pandemic growth is decelerating. That is not declining. So let me be clear on that. It is not a decline. The growth rate is just decelerating. We are returning to a more normal cycle in terms of growth rates for our revenues. And I mentioned this earlier, the economic uncertainty around inflation, national market volatility, the threat of canceled federal grants, and of course, the phase out of the COVID era funding for schools. So all of that has been taken into account as we worked on this 26 budget. Let's briefly look at the 25 budget recap. So there are three primary things I want to focus on here. One is the targeted savings. As a reminder, we did have a targeted savings in the budget last year in 25. It was $16.5 million on the GSD and $1.5 million on the USD side. The schools did not have targeted savings, just on USD and GSD. The second piece I'll point to is projected revenue. So right now we are expecting our revenue to come in at about 98.7% of budget. The primary misses this year were on property tax as well as our sales tax. On the expenditure side, we are within budget. So departments are spending within budget. I do want to remind folks, we did give the hospital a $10 million supplemental this year. And then surpluses. We did have surpluses in FY24 and 25, and those were appropriated as follows. $106 million was appropriated from the general fund, $65 million was appropriated from the schools fund, and in 25, we appropriated $38 million. So why do these three things matter? They matter because they impact the 26 budget in the fact that we actually have to restore fund balance this year to our targets. So this has not happened in some time that we've actually had to restore fund balance. So I really wanted to emphasize that this is the reason we are actually having to restore fund balance in the 26 budget this year. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron now, and Aaron is going to talk through the FY26.
Thank you, Director Reed. So I'm going to talk through the FY26 budget, and that budget starts off with the budget letter that goes out in January, in which we notify all the departments from the priorities for the fiscal year 26 planning period. In that, we look at everything that's happening with the economy. We work with the University of Tennessee Boyd Center to make sure that we have some comparisons about the economy with the state and the national level. And because of what Director Reed was previously stating, there is currently a plateauing of the current growth that we've seen historically over the past couple of years to a normal state, which means that, again, our revenues are still growing, but they're just growing slower than what they have been growing. There's no more double-digit growing. It's just single digits, which is still good. So we do have a very reliable revenue source. In that, we are making sure that we are looking at the inflation, economists worrying about the recession, unstable interest rates at the current moment, and our reliance on tourism. So those are the things that we're looking at from the revenue perspective to make sure that we are planning the revenue that's adequate for the expenditures that we currently have to fund. And in that, those are the debt services increase, contractual increases, partially funded initiatives that we knew we partially funded for 25 that will come full funded in 26, and any inflationary increases that we're seeing across the department, as well as the pay plan modification for fiscal year 26 as projected. In that, this is the historical growth of our budget over the last couple of years, and with this being a reassessment period, we were revenue neutral to begin the reassessment period, but because we do have structural expenditures that we do have to cover for contractual increases. And again, we did do a budget target savings for departments of about 18, 19 million. We had to cover that as well because we knew that we were asking departments to decrease their expenditures in fiscal year 25, so then that way we can fully fund and have a stable budget in 25. But because of that, the first part of the 26 planning period was to make sure that they had enough operating dollars, so restoration of their operating dollars in full occurred as part of the budget process. So with that, our current budget stands at $3.8 billion. This is just a year-over-year comparison of the 25 current budget to the 26 recommended budget by fund. In that, we are going from a $5.3 billion budget in 2025 currently, and that includes the enterprise funds, water and sewer funds, and internal service funds, and a lot of the special revenue funds, to a $6.1 billion. And in that number, some of the increases that we're seeing in the special revenue fund would be for Choose How You Move. So any new fund or any new revenue fund that occurred in 25, we're starting to plan for in 26, and any increases that we're starting to see in 25, we're actually capturing full in 26. So some of these numbers are increased by special revenues, but also increased by the revenue projection that we are needing to occur for the expenditure to make sure we have a balanced budget.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, so now we're going to take a look and divide this 26 budget, now that you've kind of got a big picture, into two different buckets. We're going to look at revenues and expenditures. Let's start on the revenue side, which is the non-pyramid side of this slide. So as Aaron mentioned, the recommended budget is around $3.8 billion. This is a 15.6% increase over 2025. That does include transfers. There's a little footnote there. And what that represents is a total increase of $529 million. That is broken down, however, into two pieces. One is the use of fund balance, which is about $20 million. That is out of the USD, and we have a slide coming up on that so you can see the breakdown of that, as well as $509 million of new revenue growth, okay? On the pyramid side, you will see that our budget is structurally balanced. The expenditures are $3.66 billion. The fund balance restoration, which I talked about earlier, is $64.1 million. And then we are establishing for the first time the Budget Sustainability Fund, which is $74.8 million. All right, where does the money come from? So let's focus on the revenue side real quick. The revenue really is derived mostly from property taxes. About 57% of our revenue comes from property tax. The next largest bucket is local option sales tax at about 19.41%. Other government agencies make up about 12.5%. All other revenue is about 10.5%. And then we are using some fund balance this year, which is about 0.5% or $20 million. All right, let's talk about this. This is a really important slide. So of that $509 million, so the amount that is not fund balance, this is the additional revenue that we are seeing this year. Property tax revenue makes up 28.7% of that growth. Local option sales tax, 2.2%. All other government agencies is really flat, and all other revenue is about 2.4% or $9.4 million. So what does that mean? I put it here in writing so everyone can see it. But what it means is the recommended budget for 2026 for all revenue sources other than property tax is only 1.6% or $25.6 million. What this means is we had to increase our property tax revenue sufficiently to avoid cutting services, schools, and safety. So it had to grow your property tax revenue in order to sustain the budget. All right. So let's break revenue down a little further, and let's first start talking about property tax. So property tax this year, in terms of property tax revenue, is complicated. It is impacted this year by 3 different things that are going on. One is the reappraisal. The second is the GSD-USD study adoption. And the third is the rate itself. So appraisal, study, and rate. Aaron is going to walk us through the first 2 of these, and then I will highlight number 3, which is the rate itself.
Thank you. So the last reappraisal that was done was in 2021, and as it currently stands, there was a 4-year cycle in between reappraisal or reassessment periods. And currently we're in the reassessment period. Because of that, the assessor, working with her office and all the great work her office does, went out and made sure that true valuation was recorded for all properties, those properties that were impacted by COVID amounts. So that way, the increase that we're seeing for the valuation is attributed to some of the COVID amounts, but also some of the actual ratio that was occurring in the 2 years. So with this current reassessment, this is that full valuation. So with that, we've worked with the assessor and they did all of their magical work to give us the numbers that we needed to understand what the base of the budget would be or the base of the rate would be. And then from there, we do the certified tax rate with the assessor's office to make sure that that is a revenue neutral operation. And as Director Reed has stated before, we then make sure that we cover the expenditures that need to be covered to make sure we have a structurally balanced budget over the period until the next reassessment period. That's the really important piece of that, is that we're having to project out for the next 3 years to make sure that we have enough to cover our budget in this one time period. And with that, we borrowed this heat map from the assessor's office just to understand that the 45% medium increase and how it spreads out across all of you all's districts to make sure that there are going to be some increases in the property tax payments by residents, but there are also going to be some decreases based upon where you fall in that 45% median increase. But there was a study that was conducted or authorized by council in 2022 that asked finance to look at the USD expenditures and the GSD expenditures and see if those expenditures that were in the USD at that time were solely attributable to the USD. And over the course of a phase 1 study working with our consultant Raftelis, they provided us the observation that they could not distinguish certain expenditures solely to the USD that was being expended in the USD. And based off of that phase 1 study, we asked them for a phase 2 study to see how that would impact our budget and also give us recommendations to make sure that we can accurately capture expenditures that need to be redistributed to the GSD. And what this budget does, it takes those observations and recommendations from Retellus and moves a large portion of expenditures that were normally budgeted in the USD and shifts those to the GSD because those services cannot be distinguished just on the USD alone. So they are occurring across the USD and GSD. So now this budget corrects and makes sure that we are identifying the expenditures necessary in the GSD. And those expenditures mostly relate to fire, police, and the expenditures that will stay mostly in the USD that can be identified as USD will be street lighting, retirement plans for those old district, City of Nashville district, and then also just some minor benefit accounts to make sure that we have enough to cover the expenditures in the USD. But that created a big shift of expenditures out of the USD that are now in the GSD and part of this increase.
And this slide here, you can actually see exactly what Aaron was talking about, which is the previous configuration and after adoption of the GSD study. The one thing I really want to point out here, and I want to remind folks, is the USD rate is on top of the GSD rate. Let me say that again. The USD rate is on top of the GSD rate. So shifting to the GSD does not mean that the USD households don't pay for it. What it means is that everyone in the county is now paying for it. So fire is now being paid for by everyone in the county, not just the USD, because everyone in the county is receiving the benefits of our fire department. Okay. That was just a key point I wanted to make sure we walked through. All right, the last piece of our complicated property tax revenue is the post-equalization rate increase. So here you can see the current rate, which was in FY25, was the 3.254, and this is combined. This is USD and GSD combined rate. The proposed CTR, which is some legislation that was filed this week, we are still waiting final approval from the State Board of Equalization. So they need to concur on the proposed CTR. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that that has not been blessed by the State Board of Equalization yet. But that rate is 2.222. What's recommended in the budget this year for FY26 is 2.814. So that change from the proposed CTR to the recommended that's in the tax levy is a change of about 26.4%. Now, what also happened, if you'll notice the proposed CTR, it's revenue neutral before the adoption of the USD GSD study. Okay, so that second bullet point is before USD GSD adoption. That is what is required by the State Board of Equalization. That we couldn't adopt that in that CTR that's filed. So part of the shift too is that USD GSD study. And that's where you land with the recommended tax levy. Now, one thing I want to point out in the box is an individual's. So I'm a homeowner, right? An individual's increase or decrease, because folks are going to see decreases, are determined by these three factors. They're not determined by just one of these factors. They're determined by all three of these factors when they will receive their property tax bills in the fall. Okay? The last thing I want to point out is that this rate, the increase, it really mirrors the inflation rate. that has been hitting our city and nation in terms of inflation rate. And the last thing I will point out is that we are trying to make sure that we can afford Nashville's growth. This is a very back to basics budget and a common sense approach. And I say that because we looked at all of the revenue, and property tax is the largest, and the other revenue is not growing at the rate it needs to keep up with inflation and the growing needs of the city. Next, I'm going to turn to the property tax rate comparison and what that looks like for our historic property tax rate. You can see that it is the lowest in the last 10 years, but it is now the lowest rate since 1972. This is a comparison of the rate compared to the other major cities within Tennessee, and these are city counties property taxes. So there's a little footnote, but I just want to make sure everybody realizes that Memphis is not just Memphis, it's Memphis, Shelby County, it's city county, and we are lower than the other three cities within Tennessee. And then we are on par or lower than several cities surrounding us as well. And these are the 25 rates for those cities, not 26. So not exactly apples to apples. But it does give you a pretty good flavor of where our rate lands in Tennessee. Okay, now we've talked through property tax. Let's take a look real quick at our other large revenue streams, because it's not just property tax. We know there is local option sales tax and some of the other taxes and what that growth looks like. I know this is a little small, but when we send it out, you'll be able to see it. But the two things I really want to point out here are the circles. So if you see the circles, you can see what Aaron and I have been pointing out, which is that our rapid post-pandemic growth is decelerating. So the area without the circles is where the revenues were really accelerating. It's what led to the surpluses in the budget the last several years. The economy is returning to a more normal cycle, and you can see that visually it is more of a normalized growth rate across these various revenue streams. All right. So that's really a recap of the revenue side. And next, we're going to talk about the expenditure side. Back to you, Aaron.
Thank you. So where does the money go? So currently in the 2026 budget, 12% of that has to go through to debt service. So our contractual obligations for the debt service payments. 38% goes to education, and the rest across the USD, GSD goes to operating funds. So that makes sure that we can operate efficiently for 2026 and beyond. And of that, this is just a graphical of the major expenditures that we have by certain categories, and education being one of the largest that we're funding in this 2026 budget. Law enforcement and care of prisoners is a second. And then general government and then fire prevention are the other two, rounding out with, of course, leaving out debt service. But those are sort of the expenditures that we're looking for in 2026 to make sure that we are having a continuity of budget, making sure that we're growing adequately, and making sure that we're well funded for the next 3 years.
All right, pay plan. So in this budget, the pay plan as presented to the Civil Service Commission and approved for the restructured pay plan is adopted. However, it is a 1% across the board, 2% merit eligibility, and it does exceed the 3-year average living wage. The total amount in the pay plan in the FY26 budget, again, across just the tax-supported funds, is $55.8 million. As Councilmember Porterfield mentioned, we will be having a working session with Director Shannon Hall, and she will come and walk through the pay plan in great detail at one of our working sessions. The next piece we want to focus on is schools, because it's schools, safety, and service. So in terms of schools, there is a budget of about $1.5 billion. This excludes the fund balance restoration and the establishment of the budget sustainability. This is for operating for schools and schools debt service, so about $1.5 billion. The increase, and this is on the operating side, again, no budget sustainability, no fund balance, is $132 million. Now, this excludes also some of the investments that the general fund is making for schools as well. The school's nurses will be supported this year by our Department of Health, and that's an investment of about $15 million. And MMPD will continue to provide the school resources officers, and we are adding another 23 to that program as well this year. I do want to mention here that we are still working with the state of Tennessee on TISA. What is TISA? Tennessee Investment in Student Achievement. That is the money that comes from the state. In the current budget, that revenue is about $280 million. That number is an estimate, and the schools is still working with them. And then just looking high level about our investment in quality schools, it is a 13% funding increase year over year. It provides for textbooks, equipment, security, teacher pay, support staff pay, college and career readiness, more school resource officers, and our investment has really been paying off. In 2024, Metro schools had the highest graduation rate on record, and Metro Schools is the only district of the largest 100 urban districts to rank in the top 10 in both math and reading for post-pandemic recovery for how many years in a row? 2 years in a row. So really exciting stuff, and it really shows that our investment in our schools is really paying off.
Thank you. So other investment in safe neighborhoods, there's going to be $15.3 million invested in the Nashville Fire Department, and this includes a new truck company for South Nashville, additional personnel countywide, and a new EMS unit, fire marshals, additional fire marshals and co-responders are part of that $15.3 million investment. Also, Metro Police will have a new transit division funded by the Choose How You Move revenue funding. Additional school resource officers, as Director Reed had mentioned, 23 of those. And the permanent flex unit of D-Detail, there's additional resources there to make sure that that can continue to be funded and that those officers can alleviate a lot of the call volume that they've been doing this year. Additional increases will be seen $11 million in emergency communication staff. Office of Family Safety staff will increase by 6. Courts, clerks, district attorneys, and public defender will all get additional funding, a part of this $11 million increase investment. And in addition to that, the continuation of the Office of Youth Safety and Permanent Establishment and a director of youth of violence prevention in this current budget. Invested in reliable services. So with these there's going to be $45 million invested in the unified housing strategy. Of that, it's inclusive of bars, but also inclusive of department investments to make sure that housing as a whole for Metro is looked at and made sure to be maintained. There's also going to be investments in waste services, adding 30 FTE to waste services to make sure that those services provided to our residents are maintained adequately and on time. Parks, new funding for safety, and then also health and wellness programs, making sure that health department and then also a lot of the funding that may have been at jeopardy is made sure to be funded in this current budget to make sure that we have continuation of services.
All right, and this is fund balance. So this is actually the fund balance roll forward that is included in the ordinance. And I want to point out 2 things. One is the use of fund balance. So those are the negative numbers, that 18.8 million and the 1.5 million in the urban service district. We are using fund balance. That's that 20 million of fund balance that I talked about on the revenue side earlier. That's what that is. We are using that fund balance because we had excess fund balance available in those funds. As you can see, the percentages there, even after the use, we're still at 19.4 and 52.3%, well above our targets for those particular funds. On the general service district, we are restoring fund balance, and the fund balance restoration is about $64 million. And again, you'll see the percentages. Those should look familiar, the 17% and the 50% on the debt funds. And then we are also establishing the budget sustainability funds this year as well. These are funded at 2% on the general service district and 4% on the urban service district, for a total of $74.8 million.
Thank you. So next, this is our calendar, and Chair Porterfield talked about this at the beginning of the presentation and beginning of this meeting, but the first reading of the mayor's recommended budget will be May 20th. Next week through the 22nd of May, we'll have the budget hearings, the department hearings. And then after that, the public, June 3rd, there's going to be the public hearing, and then the second reading of the operating budget. In between then, we'll have the budget work sessions where the Budget and Finance Committee will meet with Office of Finance, or the Finance Department and Office of Management and Budget to go over the details of the mayor's recommended budget. And in that process, we make sure that we are adequately answering the questions of what's in there, what's funded, what's the availability for any of the wish list items. And then the third and final reading will be on June 17th, and the charter deadline to pass the budget is June 30th.
Great. And then this is key legislation just to track: budget ordinance, tax levy, urban council resolution, certified tax rate, pay plan resolutions, tax anticipation notes, and the waste department establishment. As a reminder, the capital improvements budget will be filed by planning by May the 15th. And then we will be having one additional 4% reserve fund resolution this year that relates to 2025. It's just some small items that will be coming through as well. All right. And with that, we want to thank you all so very much for your time today. We will definitely take questions. I will remind folks too that this is really a high-level overview of the budget. So, so if we can't answer your detailed questions today, we will definitely make sure that we get back to you. Okay, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so very much. Since the director has been so kind to offer up the option to take questions, we will take just a very few questions because we do still have a full agenda that we have to go into. So I did see 3 hands, so we will very briefly take those questions. For Councilmember Druffel, you're recognized.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Is any of the recommended budget replacing potential loss in federal grants? I heard this through, I don't know if the mayor or someone mentioned that, and I was just curious if you...
So what we've done is we've actually been, let me back up and say, we monitor federal grants on a daily basis and what is happening with the with the federal grants. It is a little bit like a roller coaster. One day it's, we lost a grant, the next day it's back. And so it's been a little bit of a ping pong in terms of the grants. We are monitoring those, and there is, like I said, still a considerable amount of uncertainty with our federal and state grants. Most departments have reported no loss in federal funds, and many grant contracts have already been renewed for FY26. So we are, again, we're monitoring those. The one thing we did do this year was set up the budget sustainability funds so that we can buffer against some of that in the event we were to lose a really significant grant that we wanted to make sure that we funded.
But just to clarify, this doesn't account for any loss in federal grants?
No.
The budget you were making? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Rutherford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing me, even though I'm not on the committee. You mentioned that the State Board of Equalization, you're waiting on them to concur with the 2.222 rate, the revenue neutral rate. Is there any chance that they would not concur? And then if they, what would happen in that event? Is that just a formality?
So a lot of times there's a little bit of back and forth. They may request additional information from the assessor. This is not a finance function. This is really an assessor function. So I want to be clear on that. So a lot of times they may ask the assessor for some additional information, getting clarification on some things like that. We do not anticipate that to change from the SBOE.
Thank you. Councilmember Spain, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I'd like to talk about the USD GSD study implementation. So you described the proposed increase in the property tax rate at 26.64% to basically track inflation. I understand that. But if you break that down, and if my math is right, and I'd like to think that it is, the GSD rate goes up by almost 40%, 39.45, while the USD rate goes down by almost 86%. Can you help me wrap my mind around that?
So the best way I can really explain it is that you have to, and that's why I made my comment earlier about that the USD rate is on top of the GSD rate. And so you have to, it's a complicated thing. We actually do have a chart that breaks it down into the GSD and USD. We are happy to supply that to you, but it is a shift of the fire expenses, which were about $110 million. So that shifted out of just the USD folks paying it to everyone is now paying for those fire services.
If I can, Madam Chair. Before, the fire services were split between GSD and USD, correct?
The majority of the fire expenses were in so the 110 million I was referring to, that was what was just in the USD for fire. Did I say that right, Aaron?
Yes.
Okay.
So now that 110 million is being borne by the entire GSD, by everyone.
Right. But there was a portion that was already being paid by the folks in the GSD, so you could argue that now they're paying for it twice?
So we would have to provide that data to you all, but essentially most of the fire services were isolated and centralized in the USD because they were also part of the GSD. So that's why most of the services were in the USD, because the USD residents paid on top of the GSD rate. Now we're saying that this is solely a GSD operation or a full county operation, and taking it out of the GSD, taking it out, of the USD and shifting it to the full county. So it goes from this city isolation of expenditures to a countywide expenditure.
It's really, and I'm going to say it the best way I can, which is the people who are providing the service are now paying for the service.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'd like to see those charts if I could.
Yeah,
Thanks.
happy to do that.
Thank you. And then we have one more question from Councilmember Evan Siegel. But before I recognize you, I'll try to say it in a different way, and then Finance, if y'all can let me know if y'all agree with this assessment. There was some conversation about whether or not the GSD, the conversation was that there was a thought that the GSD was paying too many taxes and not getting enough city services. So there was a study that was done, and out of the study, what was found out was that the GSD actually wasn't paying their fair share in services that they were reaping the benefit from. So they're getting fire services, but not really paying for those services. So now everybody gets to pay for the services that we all benefit from. And I'm seeing some head nods, so that would be a correct statement. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized. And we'll make sure to get that breakdown to you. Trust and verify, so I believe in verifying information as well, Councilmember Spain, so we'll make sure you get that. And Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. To piggyback on that, before I get to my question, is Councilmember Allen also had a really good analogy here. We think of the GSD as a donut sometimes on this body, but the GSD is really a jelly-filled donut. It's not a donut with a hole in the middle. And so when we're talking about the GSD in this sense, it's the whole donut, not the ring donut. And I think that gets people confused, but I liked that. So Yeah, now everyone wants a donut. My question is, when we're in reappraisal year, sometimes we end up getting bit because it gives everybody in the county an opportunity to appeal the value of their property in a way that when they are not reassessed, they do not have the ability to do. Those numbers are typically not final on appeal, often not even close to being final on appeal until after we set the budget. And so I'm just curious, do we have any sort of like loss percentage that we are calculating in because of the reappraisal process?
That is a great question, council member. Thank you for asking that. In the CTR, we actually do factor in what's called an appeal allowance. So that is a number that's selected, and that is factored into the calculation of the revenue neutral rate, of which we base it on for the FY26 budget. So that's one portion. In addition, when we're budgeting property tax revenue, we also have an allowance for things that we don't think are collectible, if you will, and that's generally around 3%.
And I guess my follow-up question is, could we find out, not today, because I know we're limited on time and who would actually remember this, but sort of what our average rates are, 4 years ago and 8 years ago, just as like a benchmark?
Yeah, like collection rates. Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have that data.
Okay, before appeals and then after, sort of the delta.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'll get that for you.
Thank you so much. And colleagues, just as a friendly reminder, well, one, thank you for the brevity of your questions, and thank you for finance for answering those questions and for your extensive presentation. You can go back and watch this, colleagues, at any point in time on nashville.gov, and we will have the ability to ask more questions as we spend so much time together over the next 2 months delving into this budget. So again, thank y'all so much, and we will now go ahead and go into our agenda. Thank you. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you. All right, looking at the agenda, colleagues, I do have the following items for recommendation to be on the consent agenda. If you would like to pull something, please let me know. The items that I have for consent consideration are RS 2025, 1178, 1179, 1180, 1181, 1182, 1183, 1184, 1185, 1186, 1189, 1190, 1191, 1192, 1193, 1194, 1195, 1198, 1199, 1200, 1201, 1202, 1203, 1204, and 1205. Does anyone have anything that they would like to have removed from the consent agenda? Council. Nope. And 1197 is also recommended for consent. Councilmember Sorora, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to pull 1183, 1189, and 1191.
1183, 89, and 91?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that is agenda item 13. That is agenda item 17 and agenda item 19. Okay, Councilmember Cortez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Can we remove 1202, so RS 2025-1202 and RS 2025-1203?
Okay, 1202 and 1203, those are agenda items 30 and 31.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Does anyone else have anything that they would like removed from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, we will roll through and read the captions for the items for the recommended consent agenda, starting with agenda item number 8, RS 2025-1178, a resolution approving amendments 1 and 2 to a child and family Intervention Services Grant from the Tennessee Department of Children's Services to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Davidson County Juvenile Court to provide community-based case management and probation services to children at high risk of state custody. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, and Stiles, RS 2025-1179, a resolution accepting the terms of cooperative purchasing master agreement for case management and electronic filing software for the clerk and master. Sponsor Porterfield, RS 2025-1180, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperation purchasing master agreement for online marketplace for the purchase of products and services from Amazon Business for the Department of Finance. Sponsor Porterfield, RS 2025-1181, a resolution approving amendment number 1 to a grant contract between the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Metropolitan Action Commission and United Way of Middle Tennessee to modify the scope of program, extend the grant term, and modify the number of allowable invoices for a countywide child care study. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Allen, Gatt, and Stiles, RS 2025-1182, a resolution approving a contract by and between the State of Tennessee, Tennessee Department of Health, and the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acted by and through the Metropolitan Board of Health to access the Vital Records Information Systems Management, VRISM system, for the purpose of issuing copies of birth and death certificates. Sponsors Porterfield and Evans, RS 2025-1184, a resolution accepting a grant from the Friends of Metro Animal Care and Control to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Metropolitan Board of Health to provide funding for various programs for shelter animals. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Bradford, Gatt, Stiles, and Ellis. RS 2025-1185, resolution appropriating a total of $400,000 to Safe Haven Family Shelter and amending a grant contract between the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Office of Homeless Services and Safe Haven's Family Shelter to increase the grant amount and extend the grant term for the provision of hotel rooms across the Nashville area for emergency alternative shelter for families with minor children. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Allen, Gatt, Stiles, and Ellis. RS 2025-1186, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement by and between the State of Tennessee and Nashville State Community College, NSCC, and the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County by and through the Nashville Public Library, NPL, for the lease of studio space at NSCC. Sponsors Porterfield, Gatt, and Ellis. RS 2025-1190, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperative purchase and master agreement for Class 4 to 8 electric chassis and charging infrastructure for the Department of General Services. Sponsors Porterfield, Hill, Gatt, and Stiles. RS 2025-1192, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperative purchase and master agreement for Class 4 to 8 chassis and related equipment for the Department of General Services. Sponsors Porterfield, Hill, and Stiles. RS 2025-1193, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperative purchase and master agreement for passenger buses, related accessories, and the equipment for the Department of General Services. Sponsors Porterfield and Hill. RS 2025-1194, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperative purchase and master agreement for sports servicing solutions for the Department of Parks and Recreation. Sponsors Porterfield, Gatt, Stiles, and Ellis. RS 2025-1195, a resolution authorizing the Metropolitan Department of Law to compromise and settle a personal injury claim of Kenneth Strickland against the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County in the amount of $24,000, and that said amount to be paid out of the self-insured liability fund. Sponsor Porterfield. RS 2025-1197, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement by and between the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, or OCDETF, and the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department for reimbursement of overtime salary costs for certain officers through the use of the state and local overtime and authorized expense and strategic initiative program. Sponsors Porterfield and Evans. RS 2025-1198, a resolution approving an application for the Community Traffic Safety Enforcement and Education Grant from the Tennessee Highway Safety Office to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department for community-based efforts that employ highly visible and sustained enforcement coupled with community outreach events to address impaired driving and other unsafe behaviors. Sponsor Porterfield and Evans. RS 2025-1199, a resolution approving Amendment 1 to an intergovernmental agreement between the Tennessee Department of Transportation, or TDOT, and the Metropolitan Government by and through the National Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, NDOT, for the I think that's a typo, for the acceptance of work in connection with the installation of separated bike lanes in East Nashville. Sponsors Porterfield, Gamble, Parker, and Allen. RS 2025-1200, a resolution approving Amendment 1 to a congestion mitigation air quality CMAQ grant between the Tennessee Department of Transportation, TDOT, and the Metropolitan Government by and through the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, NDOT, to extend the term of the agreement. Sponsors Porterfield, Parker, Gatt, and Ellis. RS 2025-1201, a resolution approving a donation of tire processing equipment and materials from the Civic Design Center to the National Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, NDOT. Sponsors Porterfield, Parker, Gatt, and Ellis. RS 2025-1204, a resolution approving an agreement between the United States Department of the Army and the Metropolitan Government of Nashville Nashville and Davidson County for Phase 8 of the Flood Preparedness Study in Davidson County, Tennessee. Sponsors Porterfield, Parker, Allen, and Gadd. RS 2025-1205, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperative purchase and master agreement for the purchase of lease of analytical instruments, supplies, solutions, and related services for the Department of Waste and Sewerage Services. Sponsors Porterfield and Parker. Does anyone else have anything else that they would like to be pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda say aye. Oh, can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda say aye. All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Consent agenda passes with 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. All right, so the first item that we have that was not on the consent agenda is agenda item number 1, RS 2025-1173, a resolution authorizing the National Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, or NDOT, to purchase and utilize surveillance technology available under a statewide multi-year cooperative agreement issued by Samsura Incorporated for the purpose of monitoring NDOT salt trucks in the public right-of-way in real time. Sponsors Porterfield and Parker. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Soror, followed by Councilmember Berkeley Allen. You're recognized, Councilor Soror.
Thank you, Chair. My question is going to be the same for all these 4 resolutions that we have here, and I would like someone to explain in details, since it's a surveillance technology, what this does and what data is captured, what is it used for, and all the information that they can give us on each one of this.
Thank you so very much. We do have someone in the back from NDOT. If you could please just introduce yourself before you start speaking, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Matt Purvis. I'm the Council Liaison for the National Department of Transportation, Multimodal Infrastructure. I cannot speak for the 3 or the 2 or 3 behind ours, but for our camera specifically, they use a software, first of all, that blurs all personal information. License plates aren't connected. There are cameras that are mounted onto our salt trucks for live view of roadway conditions during ice and winter events. So they're mounted forward facing only on our salt trucks that can, so we can tell what roads need more help, what roads are going to be sufficient with the salt trucks that are operating on them at that point. There is no data gathered for any sort of external use. It is the only way we use it is for internal training for our salt truck drivers, as well as to monitor roadway conditions. The software we use, like I said, blurs all personally identifying information, license plates, faces. It's mostly just pointed at the roadway itself, so it's not some wide lens or anything. So yes, that's what they're for.
Thank you, Mr. Purvis. Councilwoman Soror, did you have any follow-up questions? Thank you so very much. Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I should have this pulled up, but I can't remember. What is the official definition of surveillance? This seems like a big stretch to call this surveillance technology to me.
I'm going to defer that to someone from legal or Director Darby. Okay, Director Darby says it's going to take her a moment to pull it up. She does not know the definition offhand.
We can come back on
doesn't have
any
it
of the next
memorized.
4, because the same question prevails, so I can.
Okay.
We can go back to Councilmember Soror, and I'll re-ask the question if
All good.
Director Darby doesn't mind continuing to look.
Councilmember Soror, did you have a follow-up question? No? Okay. Seeing no additional questions, and Councilmember Allen, you're saying that you're okay with voting on this legislation while we're getting that definition. Okay. Seeing no additional questions, all those in favor say, did we already make a motion? Yes, we made a motion. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion passes 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The next item on the agenda is agenda item number 2, RS 2025-1174, resolution authorizing the Department of Water and Sewerage Services to utilize surveillance technology available under a cooperative master agreement with Rubicon Global LLC. Sponsors Porterfield and Parker. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Council Lady Sorora, you're recognized.
Thank you. A description of this one as well.
Thank you so very much. Do we have someone that would like to speak? If you could introduce yourself, please.
Tracy Thurman, and I'm Director of Waste Services. So the agreement that we have is for Rubicon. It's actually, they purchased Routeware. So in this case, there is a camera that faces inside the garbage truck to tell you if there's contamination or if there's something that may, like whether it's a big, I guess a log or something that might damage the truck itself. So that we're at least aware of that. And then there's another one that's on the arm on the side loader to get a capture of the actual container to see that it's actually been serviced.
Thank you so very much. Councilor Soror, did you have any additional questions? I'll do a follow-up question. Can any of these cameras, are any of them pointing at any identifying information? Is anything going to capture faces, license plates, or anything of that nature? Okay, and the answer that we heard was no. Okay, any additional questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The next item on the agenda is agenda item number 3. Oh, Director Darby, would you like to be recognized?
I have that definition pulled up since we're in the middle of all of this, if y'all want to hear that. Excuse me. First of all, the definition is quite lengthy, but I think the first part of the definition captures the broader idea of what surveillance technology is defined as. It shall mean any electronic surveillance device, hardware, or software that is capable of collecting, capturing, recording, retaining, processing, intercepting, analyzing, monitoring, or sharing audio, visual, digital, location, thermal, biometric, or similar information or communication specifically associated with or capable of being associated with any specific individual or group or any system, device, or vehicle that is equipped with an electronic surveillance device, hardware, or software. And then the definition goes on to include very specific types of software or surveillance technology, such as closed-circuit television cameras, biometric surveillance technology. I will read all of it to you if you would like me to read all of it, but it's pretty lengthy. I think that what is also important is a subsection in Metro Code 13.08.080 that requires the public hearing prior to or when entering into an agreement with a private entity to acquire, share, or otherwise use surveillance technology or the information it provides.
Thank you so very much, Director Darby. Councilmember Allen, does that suffice, or did you want her to continue to read it?
No, you don't need to continue to read. So was that definition from 17.4 general definition, or was that all from the 13.08080?
It's 13.08080.
Okay. So it sounds to me like we're just being very careful to ensure that we don't miss the opportunity to have a public hearing if there's any question.
That is my understanding.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you for clarifying.
Thank you so very much. RS 2025-1175, a resolution authorizing the Department of Water and Sewage Services to utilize surveillance technology available under a cooperative master agreement with Verizon Connect NWF Incorporated, sponsors Porter and Perker. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Sawyer, you're recognized.
Thank you. I know the definition is very broad and we have a whole lot in there, but I think it gives us the opportunity to look at each case each one on a case-by-case basis. So I'm okay with that. So with that said, could we have a definition of what this one does?
Thank you so very much. If you could introduce yourself, please. You have the floor.
John Honeysucker, and I have our Fleet Operations Manager, Mr. Jesse Fisher, here to give you your answer, Councilor Swore.
Thank you for the question, Council Member. Verizon Connect, we do not use cameras. They're available on the platform, but we do not utilize them.
Councilmember Sawyer, you're recognized.
Would you then describe what exactly this technology is doing?
So our Verizon Connect telematics, what it does is has GPS monitoring of the trucks along with diagnostics in the vehicle. So if a truck is running, idling, if there's a check engine light that comes on, we have access to see that.
Thank you so very much. And to be clear, you are not using any cameras. This is not capturing any personal information, license plate, faces, AI, none of those things.
That is correct, Madam Chair. No cameras.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. RS 2025-1176, a resolution authorizing the Department of Water and Sewage Services to utilize surveillance technology available under a cooperative master agreement with Zonar Systems Incorporated, sponsors Porterfield and Parker. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Sawyer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like a description of this technology and what it does, it captures, and how it's used.
Thank you so very much. We have the director joining us. If you could give us the explanation.
Okay, so for Zonar, we're not using any cameras at all. It's actually a wand and a puck system that we'll be using to capture our DOT inspections that our drivers do, pre-trip inspection, and then their post-trip inspections as required for federal DOT regulations. So they'll go around and use that wand and inspect different portions of that truck, and then that information will then be communicated back into our dispatch and let us know that they've done a proper inspection of the vehicle before it leaves our lot.
So this technology is a wand.
Yeah, wand, and then a puck system, just kind of like you go and scan at a department store if you were scanning an inventory. So it's kind of going around, and there's different zones of the vehicle that will perform a pre-trip and post-trip inspection as required by federal DOT. But it's giving us an electronic capture, sending it to our dispatchers so that they can verify that the person actually conducted the inspection. Then we have a record of it in case OSHA shows up or anything else. We'll have a documented record that's not on paper now, because right now they're currently using paper.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is this for every trip of the truck, or how often are these inspections happening?
They're required to do by law pre and post trip. So they're required to do them every day that they take a truck out. So they do them prior to leaving base, and then when they return, they're required to do post inspection.
Thank you so much. Do we have any additional questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The next item is RS 2025-960, a resolution approving an adjustment to the mixed income pilot program is authorized pursuant to ordinance number BL 2022-1170. Sponsors Allen, Swervo, Benedict, and Coopin. Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I need to move for a one-meeting deferral.
Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilmember, would you like to speak on your deferral?
Yes, ma'am. So this was deferred back in March, and it turns out that it's 62 days, and anything that's been deferred over 60 days has to be deferred by rule, but I also want to make sure that it comes back to this committee.
Thank you so very much. Any additional discussion on the one-meeting deferral? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries for a one-meeting deferral, 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. RS 2025-1142, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County and the East Bank Development Authority. Sponsors Coopin, Porterfield, and Gamble. Councilmember Coopin does not. Councilmember Evans Siegel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I have sent an email, but just follow up. I have asked to sign on as a sponsor of the bill and the amendment.
Would you like to move it?
I would like to move the bill.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilmember Evans Siegel, you're recognized.
Thanks. I'd like to move the amendment.
Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilmember, would you like to speak on the amendment?
The amendment adds a timeline for providing the audit back to the city, sort of mindful that they can take a while. We wanted to make sure we gave adequate time, which was, I believe, 6 months is what was decided was necessary, but that way Metro knows when to expect the audit back from the East Bank Authority each year.
Thank you so much for speaking on the amendment. Councilmember Coopin, would you also like to speak on the amendment?
Just that I appreciate Councilmember Evan Siegel's input on that.
Thank you so very much. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? The amendment passes 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Can I get a motion as amended? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the resolution as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The next item is a late file resolution. Sponsors Porterfield and Evans, a resolution accepting a tobacco use prevention and control services grant from the Tennessee Department of Health to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Metropolitan Board of Health to improve the health of citizens of Davidson County by prevention and controlling the use of tobacco. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The next item that was not on consent was agenda item number 13, RS 2025-1183, a resolution approving Amendment 1 to a grant from the State of Tennessee Department of Human Services to the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acted by and through the Metropolitan Board of Health to conduct immunization record audits for child care centers, drop-in centers, and group child care homes to ensure safety and well-being of children and families in Tennessee. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, and GAD. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. We do have Mr. Sharp in the back. If you could introduce yourself, please.
I'm Mr. Sharp in the back. I'm Tom Sharp. I work for the Health Department.
Thank you so very much. And I believe Councilwoman Swerve was the one who pulled this from consent. This is agenda item number 13, 1183.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in support of the audit. My question is, since we've been doing this, what is the result shows? Because this is not a new thing. And if there is a lack of compliance, what happens after that? Because we want to make sure that the kids are immunized in all these daycare centers. And what I don't want is just giving money, doing things, and we don't know what the outcome is. So I just wanted you to speak to those audits. What are the findings, and what are we doing with that?
Mr. Sharp, you're recognized.
So the law puts the onus on child care centers to check the vaccination status of their children. These audits are to make sure that the child care centers are doing that. They're not there to make sure that the vaccination rates are any particular place or not. They're there to make sure that the child care centers are following the law and checking the vaccination status of all the kids in their care.
Councilmember Sawyer, you recognized?
Thank you. I understand that. But you are auditing to make sure that they're doing that. The question is, what are we finding with that? Are they doing that? And if they're not, what happens?
If they are not, we will tell them you need to get either the paperwork or of the vaccination or a letter from the parent saying that they are opting out of that vaccination for that child or any of the children in their care that don't have it.
Councilmember Sawyer, is your question, are the families vaccinating the children, or is your question, are the child care providers doing the audit to ask for the vaccinations?
Thank you, Chair. Because we're doing an audit, we're doing it for a purpose. Is it satisfying what we're trying to do? And if it's not, are we correcting it? That's the question. Whether parents decide to vaccinate is not my question, but if we're checking if they're doing it, then we need to know, okay, are they doing it? If they're not, what is the ramification?
Then they have to provide proof that that either have vaccination of that child or a letter of exemption from the parents.
Okay. And if they don't?
Then they can't be there.
The kids cannot be there, or the daycare center gets in trouble?
So they are required by law to have one of those two things. Now, I don't know that we press charges against a child care center that doesn't have that. I'm not sure what they do. If somebody just refuses, I don't know that they do. I've never heard that they have.
Okay. And the reason why I ask is that oftentimes we do audits and we try to get to something, but there's no follow-up. There's no, if you don't do it, this is what happened. We're not going back to check. That's what my line of questioning is. So I would like to know, and if you can provide just what does this process look like? Because we just don't want to check the box that we went there, and if they didn't do it, then there's nothing we can do. That's the point I'm trying to get, and if I can get that, I'll appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Sawyer. Are there any additional questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The next item that is not on the consent agenda is agenda item number 17, RS 2025-1189, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperative purchase and master agreement for Class 4 to 8 chases and cabs and related equipment for the Department of General Services. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, and Stiles. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Sawyer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. This is for the three that were the same. In looking at the analysis, I couldn't get the difference between all three. I was trying to figure out what is the three. And then also, in looking at the cooperative agreement and the savings, you have one that has more savings and the other one barely. The 1179 had a higher savings than the 1181. And so my question is, what is the difference between all four? The description is the same. And if we have the option to use a corporate agreement to get the same thing, why are we not getting it from the place that give us the higher return or difference?
Thank you so very much. We do have someone in the back. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Brendan Bonetta with the Office of Fleet Management. So these are for multiple vendors. It's the same class 6, 7, and 8 cab and chassis vehicles. It just allows us and gives us more avenues to buy from. So one may be battle trash trucks. You can buy knuckle booms from these cooperatives. One may be Cumberland. It gives you multiple avenues to buy from.
Councilmember Sawyer, you recognize?
And so if they're exactly the same thing, and I'm reading through this, and one tells me that this cooperative agreement saves us 1.2 million, and then the other one says we only save 50 million. Is there anything that stops us from getting everything from one vendor if it's gonna save us more money?
Not that I'm aware of. I think that like I said, it just gives us multiple avenues to buy from, but I can get you more information if needed.
Will someone from finance try to take that, please? Thank you, sir.
If you could introduce yourself, please.
Hey there, Amanda Deaton Moyer with the Department of Finance. I understand that also, council member, that if it's about availability, so sometimes things are available, some things are not available, and so it's where they can find it because all of these have local dealerships. And then also, if they need the same thing, they will look and find the greatest value to Metro to preserve resources. So a knuckle boom truck available at all 4 of those places, they'll find the one that is the best deal, so to speak.
Councilmember Sawyer, you recognize?
Yes, so I'm looking at this deal here with Battle Motors, and the cooperative agreement is saving us $1.5 million. And then when I look at 1191, which is the one with, I'm trying to see who this one is, Soswell and Navister, we're only saving 15,000. We have not finalized any of this agreement, so why would we take 15,000 when we can get 1.5?
It's about availability and need. So we won't have the same need and the same availability. And I think they can talk to what those needs are and what those availabilities are.
You're recognized, sir.
That's correct. The volatility of the market changes every day. It was just recently that we worked with Waste Services to actually find battle trucks they were sanitation trucks on the ground, and we were able to get them in service now as opposed to waiting 1.5 years, 2 years on an order. So it's not just the money aspect of it too. It also is what's available at that moment and trying to get what you can get.
Councilmember Sawyer, you're recognized.
Well, thank you, but I think we'll have follow-up conversation because I'm still not getting it. 15,000 to 1.5 million is a big difference to me. And so that explanation is I'm just trying to figure it out. And we are looking at this at the same time. So it's not that we look at one in January, we're looking at one in April, then I can see there's a time difference in terms of when we're looking at it. So I'm just trying to understand this as best as I can, and I'm not right now.
Also, a lot of these varies by specifications depending on what the vehicle is. Like if it's a trash truck, a Vector truck, there's going to be different savings there because some vehicles are actually more than the others.
Thank you. And then Ms. Moyer Deaton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. That gets very close to what there's different vehicles at different times, and so the comparison will take place and will ensure that we get the best value.
Councilmember Sawyer, you're recognized.
Thank you. That was why my first question was, these were all described the same, are these the same thing? That was the first thing that I asked, and I thought it says it was all the same. If there's differences in specification, that I can understand. But if it's just we find one and then we find another one, that doesn't make any sense to me because it's around the same time. So I would I'm not going to stop on. Actually, I would want to defer the one that is only 15,000. And I would like to have a better explanation of why it's only 15, because one is 1.5, the second one is 1.2. and this one is only 15,000. So I would like a better explanation of why this one is so low. So,
Is that 1189, Councilmember?
no, I think it's 1191.
Okay, so we're
we'll
on
go ahead with this
1180. So we're on 1189 right now. Is there any additional discussion on 1189? All right, seeing none, I think we've already made a motion. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion passes, 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. 1190 was not pulled from consent, so we already approved that one. 1191, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperative purchase and master agreement for Class 4 to 8 chassis, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and chassis, CHASSIS, and related equipment for the Department of General Services, sponsors Porterfield, Hill, and Stiles. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilmember Sawyer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask for a 1 meeting deferral.
Is there a
of this
second?
one.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there discussion on the deferral? All right, seeing none. All those in favor? Oh, Councilmember, my apologies, Councilmember Toombs. I didn't see you over there. Councilmember Toombs, you're recognized.
What's the impact of a 1 meeting deferral?
Thank you so very much. You are recognized, sir.
Apologize, I missed your question. What are you asking?
What's the impact of a 1 meeting deferral? If we don't vote on this for another 2 weeks, is it going to hurt anything?
I know that we were waiting on some of these actually purchase sweepers off of and some trash trucks off of.
Is 1191 one of the ones that you're waiting to make the purchases off of, or was it like 1190 or 1189?
I think it was 1189. I apologize. 1191, I guess we could defer.
Okay. Any additional discussion on the potential deferral? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of a 1 meeting deferral say aye. Any opposed say nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? 1 meeting deferral passes, 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The next
Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next item that is not on the consent agenda is Agenda Item 24, RS 2025-1196, a resolution approving Amendment 1 to a Stop Fatality Review Grant from the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Office of Family Safety to promote a coordinated multidisciplinary approach to improving the criminal justice system's response to sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking crime. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Allen, and Gag. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The last and final item that was not on the consent agenda is Agenda Item Number 31, RS 2025-1203, a resolution approving the Metropolitan Department allows a, just kidding, it was 2 more items. Agenda Item Number 30 first, RS 2025-1202, a resolution authorizing the department to allow to compromise and settle the personal injury claims of Rosemary Miklas against the Metropolitan Government of Nashville, Davidson County in the amount of $28,000, and that said amount to be paid out of self-insured liability funds. Sponsor Porterfield, can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilmember Cortez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to, just a question for the Department of Law. How uneven were these concrete panels? Because the one thing I know about concrete is it cracks, and it seems like this could be a liability for us across the city if it's something that's, it seems like it might be very small.
Thank you so very much. If you could introduce yourself, please.
I'm Chris Lackey with the Metro Department of Law. This particular panel was about 1 3/4 inches to 2 inches. And it was at the expansion joint. It wasn't cracked in the middle, and it was marked for replacement already. That does occur, and that's why there are expansion joints. Typically, there is law out there that says that things up to about 1 inch to 1.5 inches for normal everyday pedestrians are okay. But this does happen, and it's a matter of people reporting it, and NDOT fixes it as it's reported.
Does it hurt the case that it was already marked for repair?
Yes.
Okay, so you would recommend going forward with this?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so very much. Are there any additional questions? Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Has it been repaired now?
Excellent question. We have, okay, let me get you on the mic. Can you say that again?
Yes, ma'am, it has.
Okay, and that was from the legal department. Thank you. Department of Law.
That's what I want to hear. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Any additional questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting, motion carries. 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The last item on the consent agenda, RS 2025-1203, a resolution authorizing the Department of Law to compromise and settle the personal injury claim of Janice Seals against the Metropolitan Government of Nashville, Davidson County in the amount of $35,000, and the said amount being paid out of the self-insured liability fund sponsored Porterfield. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Cortez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for NDOT. When we're removing signs, are we leaving metal poles in the ground?
That is a great question. You are recognized.
Hey, Council Liaison Matt Purvis. No, this was most likely hit by a vehicle or taken down by some other means. Legal can speak to the specifics of the case. I'm not sure if we had notification of this before the trip and fall incident, but no, we do not leave the metal posts in the concrete when we remove.
Been removed since?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the question was, has it been removed since? And the answer from NDOT was, yes, it has been removed. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries. 10 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. And before we adjourn, if we all could wish Councilmember Olivia Hill a happy birthday. Councilmember Hill celebrated her birthday with us, even though she's not on the committee. So thank you and happy birthday. Oh, her 60th birthday. So that deserves a big round of applause. Thank you for being here, Councilmember Hill. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.